Welcome to another edition of MoneyBall. Today we have a very special guest that we're very proud to have, famous Buffalo Sabre, Mr. Rob Ray. Mr. Rob Ray, how are you?
How you doing, everybody?
Doing great, doing great. Thank you very much for being on the show today and spending a little time with us and letting us grill you a little bit and and ask you some questions. First thing I noticed off the bat, right off the bat here, when I was doing, our research team was real heavy here going at it. Same birthday as Coletta. Now, not the same year, right? I think there's a slight difference there, but I noticed same birthday. Did you ever know that before?
Yeah. I'm 6'8", 68. He's 6'8", 86.
Oh, no kidding. So just flop a couple of 6 and 8s around, huh?
There's a few years difference there.
So listen, I want to dive right in and kind of ask you, was hockey your first passion? Growing up as a kid, was this something that you always knew you wanted to do?
Well, where I grew up, it was a town of 1,200 people, so you really didn't have much choice. You had a softball field in town, and you had a hockey arena, and the only other option was curling. Okay. So, no, that's just what everybody did, and that was the big thing. Like in small town Canada, everybody played hockey, and for us, being in a small area, it's like everybody that showed up for the team got to play. You'd argue over who's going to be the goaltender when you're younger, and you just played, and it was a ton of fun. But for me, growing up till the time I was probably 15 years old, you never played a team or a town that wasn't 20 minutes away. That's as far as you ever went. So every had an arena, you played each other, and that's the way it was. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. But you know what? Like I say, small town Canada, when there was a game, it didn't matter what age level it was, the rink's packed. Like there was nothing else to do in town. So you've got all the fathers up in the top row, smoking and having a few beers. Yeah. But it was jammed all the time because it was really the only thing to do. So everybody was supportive, and it was a great environment growing up. And the older you got, the more intense it got, and it was a lot of fun.
That's really cool. Now, did you always know, or did the town always know? Did they say, hey, this guy's got some athleticism, a talent, he's really sticking out from the other players? Or was it something that you kind of grew into after that 15, 16 or on your journy? Did you always go ahead?
As your kid, you I guess you stood out. I don't want to sit here and I guess. And when we hit, I don't know what age group it would have been, Pee-wee, it kind of started a separation, and then Bantam, a little bit more. My second year Bantam, we went to the Ontario playoffs and or the finals actually for the Ontario championship. And it kind of from there, it just kind of blossomed. That next year, I got a chance to try out for junior B, made it tier 2 the next year, major junior the next 3 years, and then here. So it was kind of that last year kind of maybe put you over the top, and people started taking notice in the local area, and you got a chance to progress each year. So it was just kind of
the reason I kind of asked that, my son plays travel hockey, and he's 9 years old, so I think it was, what was it, Pee-wee last year, I think, maybe squirt. Regardless, you can kind of see, the separation even at that age, right? You can see the kids that want to be out there versus the kids whose parents want to be out there, right? Want them to be out there. And, you can kind of see the kids that are working harder and putting more into it. Now, obviously, small town, hockey town, like you said, and that's all y'all did. So, there might not have been baseball or football, so your passion in your life was hockey, where I think now kids have more options. I mean, kids have a choice of 10 sports, travel if they want to. But it sounds like, you were at a young age. Okay, listen, this guy's got the skill, and this is somewhere he could go, so that's kind of why I was asking that. And, then going up now, I guess, what style of hockey was it back then? Were you always a little chippy, or were you a goal scorer back then, or how did it go?
Back then, I could always skate, and I think that was the thing that separated me from a lot of the kids playing back home. But no, you didn't play that way. I didn't play that way until you hit junior. Actually, because that's just the way it was. But, as you're talking about young kids, I coached my son now. We're over at the Junior Sabres and even in Amherst before. But yeah, you see kids that are good at a younger age. The thing is, they're not always the kids that are going to be good when you need to be good.
That's a great point.
At 15, 16, 17, that's where you want to be starting hitting that, not peak, but getting into that play. And I think a lot of kids that are really good young, especially around here, they try to do too much. And I think it kind of burns a lot of kids out because, yourself, the kids grow at a different rate. There's kids that are 4 foot at that age and some are 6 foot. So it kind of levels it out as you go. But I think a big mistake a lot of people make is they try to push it too soon. Oh, my kid's pretty good at, 8, 9, 10 years old. That's great. But it's where he's going to be when he hits 16 years old.
I could not agree more with that. I mean, I share the exact same sentiment, and seeing these parents, and I think from coaching Junior Sabres and from all your experience, how kind of crazy, parents can get with this stuff. And I preach to you. Yeah. Right. I don't need to tell you. And I preach constantly. I coached like a year of Howie's, a couple of years of that kind of stuff. I'm obviously not on that level of coaching, but even in those leagues, just seeing how crazy parents get, and their kids 7, 8, 9 years old. And what you just said, you hit the nail on the head. They ain't even at puberty yet, right? This kid could grow 2 feet. I mean, you just don't know. So you make a really, really good point there.
And I was just saying, like, coming from where I came from, the ice went in after the fair every year. So that would be, late September, the ice would get in and it would be gone by mid-March. It'd be depend on if, there was teams still in the playoffs or not. And as soon as they're done, the ice came out. So you didn't get overwhelmed that way. And I never put a pair of skates on in the summer until I was probably 15 or so. And, even for us, we had to drive about an hour to get to a rink because
wow.
I mean, you're playing junior, it was more of a conditioning thing than anything. But yeah, I think a lot of parents, all they think about is, playing games. We got to play in tournaments. We got to this.
Yeah.
If they just took that time and effort to 1 day a week or 2 days a week, if that's what they want to do, learn to skate better, go to power skating, skill stuff like that, instead of worrying about traveling all over the world, playing, in it's for different teams, concentrate on working on skills, whether it's skating or puck handling at that time is the biggest thing. And I tell you, I coached in Amherst during COVID, and we had, I want to say 90 some practices between games. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened. It was hard to keep the kids focused for that long and just practice. But we had a chance to work on skating. We had a chance to work on their passing, all the things they struggled at and they never put the effort into because, in a normal practice, you don't have the time. It's 50 minutes.
Right. Yep.
Everybody wants to play games.
Yep.
But for those kids, I think it was the best thing that happened because they had a chance to really concentrate and work on their skills for a long period of time. And I think a lot of them benefited a ton from it. So it's not the games. You're not learning anything in a game. You're learning it in practice. And if you got good coaching out there that he understands that and they're coaching the kids the right way, then that's more beneficial than playing in any game.
That is absolute gospel to me. Hearing that, come from someone of your stature's mouth is absolute gospel to me. And I try to preach exactly what you just said all the time. Hopefully now, right, they're going to listen to me, right? So now listen, Rob Ray agrees with me. He says the same thing. Shut your mouth and do what what we're telling you here, right? But no, truly, I really I think that's absolutely spot on. Now, the Junior Sabres, from a coaching standpoint, man, I mean, I have a real good friend I grew up with, Jeff Braun, who I think is coaching the 7U. I think you may know him. And obviously Patty's doing the 14U. And I'm not sure if you're with that team.
Yeah, myself and Patty Coletta and Matty Ellis and Rhett Warner. We help out with our 14U team. We started last year and then got them now. So,
I mean, what an excellent crew of coaches.
Played in the NHL, and you still got some kids and parents that look at it and you go, why? And it's like, seriously?
That's amazing. That's amazing. They're questioning where you have their kid playing. And
oh my,
yeah.
Well, and my kid's not on the penalty kill. Is that gonna hurt his development? And somebody's watching him moving forward, and it's like, no, okay,
It's wild.
just we're not doing it to harm. We're trying to do what we can to make you the best player we can. Win or lose, we're here to help you.
Right.
Okay. Not against. So there's a lot of things like that could come up sometimes, and you try to get the point across. When you're young, you're going to play power play, penalty kill, regular shift, all that kind of stuff. And as you progress farther into your career, if you do, you're going to start getting pushed into an area of specialization. They may look at you and go, okay, we need you to be a defensive forward. We need you to defensive defenseman. Offensively, you're a power play specialist. You're a penalty kill. So what I don't think a lot of people get is the farther they go, they're going to be asked to do something that they might not want to do or are doing. So you've got to be able to adapt. And I think the guys that succeed are guys that are willing to adapt and are able to adapt and change their game a little bit to what that team needs at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it. That's a great point as well.
Rob, I got to ask, you got about, 100 or more sticks behind you. And I read there was a nasty rumor going around that you would just kind of take those on your own.
I would, honest to God, when I played, I was a guy that I looked at it when I was playing that it was this is the most unbelievable thing. From day one till the last day I played, I totally appreciated the opportunity. I looked at other guys and other teams.
That's awesome.
And that's cool. And you just admired a lot of guys.
Yeah.
And I always just over the years just collected sticks from those kind of guys that I liked. And, back then it was a little easier and the guys were more willing to, trade, give them. And it was awesome. These are just some. I probably got 500 or 600 sticks of guys that over the years that you just kind of collected along the way, and I still get them now. Certain guys that my kid likes, I get sticks for him from them, and he's got his own little collection started down there. But I like it. I like the history of the game. I love the old equipment, all that kind of thing that to this point. And appreciate it. So I like to have a little bit. Sometimes it gets a little overwhelming, and I got boxes of stuff in the basement that I haven't looked at in years. But at some point, my kid's into it now, and it's get to the point of, hey, what do you want to keep and what do you want to get rid of? So we'll do that at some point.
Yeah. And what are a couple of your favorites?
Well, you got some good ones. You got Gretzky sticks, you got Lemieux, you got all the big guys that you played against, along with jerseys and stuff like that. So
that's incredible.
One specific, Guy Lafleur. I remember playing a game against Guy Lafleur.
That's amazing.
Like, I was in starting lineup and I look and I'm like, holy shit, it's Guy Lafleur.
Yeah.
And he looks and he goes, not bad. And he took off and I'm like, this is
that's wild. I'm trying to do the timeline here even of when you would have played with him. Was that rookie season?
Pardon me?
Was that rookie season?
No, that would have been early 90s.
Okay.
So, Larry Robinson, guys like that, that you watching and get a chance to play against them. And it was, for me, it was awesome. I still appreciate it. I still get excited when I meet guys, being involved with the alumni. You do a lot of things now, in other places, and, you get a chance to meet these guys. I'm like, I want a picture with this guy, or I want to meet this guy. So I don't know. It's just, I just appreciate it. I find now kids that are playing the game, they don't know the history of the game. They don't know the guys that were there before them. They don't understand. Like,
they don't want to know. It seems like they don't want to know.
Yeah, or no interest, and you came here and you dove into. When I got here, I never knew who the French Connection was. It was like, who the hell is the French Connection? And so you do your homework on it, ask questions, meet these guys, listen to them, tell stories, and for me, that's the best part of it. So. But you're right. A lot of guys now, they don't have an interest. I remember one day sitting in LA on the bench in practice and, just Marcel Dion and some of the guys that were in the rafters and talking to some of the young kids, like, you remember him? Like, who was he? What kind of a player? They have no idea.
Right.
So that's, when Rene Robert died here a few years ago, we were coaching that night and sitting in the room before practice, kids are asking who he was.
Right.
And I'm like, they're the French Connection, Gilbert. They had no idea who they were.
It's wild.
It's kind of sad, but I get it now. I talk to coaches now that that I played with that coach major, junior, or they coach college, asking about video and all that kind of thing, if it's a tool you use. And he goes, and so many of them will say, our kids don't even watch games anymore. They'll watch highlights the next day. They watch the goals and all that kind of thing, but they don't watch the game.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
to learn from. So, across the board, it's not just, one age. I think it's the younger generation now.
It seems now almost the higher skill level of the kid, the less interested they are in the sport, which is wild. But that's just something I've noticed.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, video as a coach, especially a young coach, coaching kids, it's the best tool.
Mm-hmm.
When we find we're able to use it as a teaching tool, you found that you could talk to the kids on the ice and try to explain them something, and some get it, some don't. But when all of a sudden you have it on video, and whether it's showing an NHL guy, whether it's showing a player from another team you just played, or showing them what they did right or wrong,
yes.
And it's unbelievable how well it works. That that's the big thing. Like, and when we were young, we didn't have that. Like, right. Even NHL, you didn't have access to popping up something. It was on a videotape, a VHS tape, and the coaches had it. You had to have no way of going back and looking at what you did, how you did it, what you didn't do, unless they had it in their morning video, showing something good or bad that you did. So it's a great tool, and I don't think enough kids use it enough, other than looking at the highlight goals and all that kind of crap that, in most cases, you don't want those kids trying at that point. And
right.
So the game itself is not on the highlight. Only the cool things that happen in the game are on the highlight. So that's all they're always getting. So
I can't wait for Deacon to hear this. And maybe he'll listen to you, since he's not listening to me. But go ahead, Jay.
I just wish the NHL would do a better job of promoting the superstars and the history of hockey. Do you think that's something that they're really lacking? I feel like it's kind of the NHL's fault almost for the way they handle things.
Yeah, no, like it is, and I think that the NHL a lot just wants to maybe promote a handful of guys when every area has a player that you could be putting out there, 2 or 3 players. And I think the big difference is too, I think locally sometimes it's done better than what the national side is, because the national side is showing what just happened and all the that side of it. I think with TV, a lot of it is local television like ours. We produce our own through the Sabres. It's run on MSG,
right?
But it's all Sabres. It's all done by them. And for I think it's up to those locals to keep the especially in front of their fan base. I listen to the radio and stuff like that now, and it depends on the age group of the people that are working it. It's, sometimes there's young that have no idea what happened before, 2005 and 6 when Jury and Briere and those guys were here. They have no idea what, in that. And, they're going, oh, this has been the greatest player. This is the greatest team and this and that. But, well, maybe from that point on, but there's been a lot of teams here and players that were off the charts that, because you haven't educated yourself on it, that you can't talk about it.
100%.
So it's kind of that way. So I like it when guys do. Sometimes it's an argument I have sometimes with our group, because there's so many of our guys that are out there that are still involved in the business that have been really successful in life, done really great things when they're done playing the game. And I think that's the kind of thing that people need to see. Like, I run our alumni now. You get emails all the time with fans asking, hey, where is this guy now? What is this guy?
Yeah.
And, so you spend time, trying to get them up to date that way. But, that shouldn't be the way it's done.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, where is Christian Ruutu right now?
Christian Ruutu is still, I think he was general manager or something of his Vin team or wherever the heck he's over there. You see him the odd time, especially when it comes around to like at the end of the year when they're looking at the guys putting their national teams together and all that.
Yeah.
Christian Ruutu, he's about 400 pounds now. He looks like
Love it.
A few times. So, but just like that kind of a guy that, at an era was a very good player here.
Yeah. Yeah. He was my favorite.
Of where these guys are. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah. So Craig Ramsey's actually a friend of the family. We've known him for years. My wife knows Susan well, or my mom knows Susan well. And, I was interested as far as him coaching Slovakia and doing an excellent job and taking them, where he did. And, just even that, right? You say like Rutu's maybe with the Finnish team, and Craig ends up coaching Slovakia. Now, does he coach through translators? I mean, how is that something that they can do like that?
I would believe that his supporting cast, his assistant coaches, and that would be, more from there, more educated language in that, and kind of send messages across. But I think you'd find most guys, they understand enough, and whether it's through him speaking or as I say, board work, video work, and all that kind of thing, that message across, because there is a lot of Canadian American coaches that are coaching those teams and just bringing a lot of different things and styles to them. So Craig's done it for years. There's a lot of guys that have maybe not been in the coaching ranks on the NHL side. They've gone there because it's a good place to be. For guys, it's a good life over there. Be in the right place, you can make some pretty good money. So
Sure.
It's a lot easier. You're only playing 40 games a year too. So it's a lot different being there than it would be here.
Now, your first game ever. Okay. We got to talk about this, right? There's a couple more things I really want to hit with you. One of them may or may not have something to do with our friend Ty Domi. But before we go into him, your first game ever, your first shift ever, Rob, you scored a goal.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and what that feeling was like.
Yeah, Gretzky probably didn't do that, did he?
Gretzky probably did not do that. Tell us what that was like.
You know what? I played before in Roch, and after the game, John Van Boxmeer told me I was being called up, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And, it took me a while to convince me that I was actually being called up. They were playing the next night. So once we started making the arrangements and that, and, to fly out the next morning to get to Pitt, it was all new. And for me, it was never expecting to get to that point. And, that day was just a whirlwind, getting to practice and, not knowing anything about having team meals afterwards or hotel. And Dougie Bodger was who I was staying with, on the road.
Yeah.
Kind of just held my hand, walked me through it. And when the game came, I wasn't thinking about who we're playing and all that kind of thing. It was more, oh my God, I'm getting the chance. And so when you got into warm-up, I remember warm-up was a disaster, and I ran into Kennedy, and he knocked me down, and he's like, just shaking his head, keep your head up. And all in. And I never got a shift early in the game, and then it was a few minutes in before I got my first shift. And I remember coming down the wing and taking the slap shot. I never took a slap shot when I cleared the blue line, and I scored, and I didn't even realize I scored, and everybody else did. And it was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And as the game went on, I ended up like goal and assist +3 or something like that in that game. And like statistically wise, it was probably the best game I ever had. But, I remember after the game going out with the guys, because back then you didn't fly out after the game. You had to stay, and you flew commercial day. And oh my God, we got so drunk that night. Dougie Bodger just getting you up the next morning, and you get home and it's practice when you get it. I'm like, ooh, this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
But, even if that had been the last game, it was like, this is what you worked for your whole life. You did it. And if it was over, it was over. But it was a pretty cool feeling. And
that had to be amazing.
First person to come from my area to the NHL to make it. So it wasn't just for me and my family, it was them as well. So my only regret is my parents didn't get a chance to see it, live and be there. My parents used to listen to the games on GR, sitting on a big hill called Suicide over where I live. And it's straight across the lake from Rochester, and they could catch GR. And my mom and dad used to go sit every night up on this hill, just the two of them, and listen to the games on the radio. And that was the only way they were able to see it. So
that's amazing. Hey, that's a great story about them.
Now
it was fun. It was pretty fulfilling. And, from that point on, it was it was just, you're lived in a dream world.
Yeah. Now that's only half the story, right? Because that was his very first shift.
Yeah, correct.
Now let's talk about his very last shift.
Yeah, in Toronto, playing with Ottawa, Jacques Martin hated me for some reason. I don't know. I can remember getting traded there, and he called me in the office, and he says to me square, the only thing he said to me, he goes, look, he goes, you're not here because I wanted you here. You're here because John Muckler wanted you here.
That's unbelievable.
Okay. Being a 5-6-year-old guy, they left no question in my mind how it was going to be. So in that game, I got a chance right out the dry score. I come back to the bench, and you could just see him just because, you actually had success.
All right.
Sat there the rest of the day and never got another shift. And there was like 3 games left in the season, and they meant nothing for the team. So the last, and he would call everybody in at the end of practice and say what we were doing and who wasn't playing. But everybody, I think, was so intimidated and scared of him for whatever reason. And so I'm like, what? Shane Knighty and I sat all the time, and him and I were great friends. And I'm like, Shane, watch this. So as soon as he calls us all in, I go, hey, Jacques. Yes, Rob Ray. He always called me Rob Ray. I go, I swear to God, if you put me in tonight, because it was the last regular game of the season, I go, I promise I will not score. And everybody just started laughing, and he got pissed off, and he goes, Eddie, you're out tonight, do the extra skate. And that was the end of it. So
that is great, man. That is great. You, we've watched your transgression into reporting, and just doing, in my opinion anyways, a phenomenal job for the Sabres. I'll be honest, man, a much better job than I expected. And I don't know what my expectations were going in. It's not like I knew you or anything, knowing, hey, how's this guy going to be? But you absolutely kill it, man. Like, you do a great job. And what I've kind of discovered over the years, call it wisdom or whatever, but I mean, just kind of the 2 cents you're adding, right? When you'll say something about a specific play, when the guys are commentating, and I always stop for a minute. I'm like, wow, that's a really smart thing, right? And I think you've found the confidence, now with that area to kind of go a little bit further, maybe a little bit above and beyond. And I really enjoy it. I know the fans really enjoy it because I ask a lot of them, and I just think you do a great job.
I think it's that extra level of authenticity that he gives.
Well, I think that's what it's all about. Like, the play-by-play guy does his job, and for us, it's like, even with RJ, when he was doing the games, it was like, when the puck dropped, he wanted you to shut up and do his thing. The whistle goes, then go ahead. And so it took a long time to get comfortable with him because, he didn't hesitate sometimes to, say, hey, what the hell did you say that for?
Yeah.
Get your point across quicker. So I think it's just, you get a little more comfortable with it. When I started the job, you really got no direction, what your job was all about or how to do it or anything like that. You just kind of, stumbled along and tried to figure it out as you went. And I think, the older you get, the more you do it, you get a little more comfortable. And,
sure.
I just think, a lot of cases, the whole idea of a play-by-play guy is, I've always been told, if you could sit there and shut your eyes and listen to him, that you could see the game and hear and understand exactly what was going on. And so you don't want to step on those toes. It's a lot different now. Like, we do it a little different than like a lot of the national. There are a lot of the national guys do a lot more talking than what we do, and it's less play-by-play and all that kind of thing. So it's just different styles for different groups, and what the play-by-play guy is comfortable with. Dan likes to talk, so you just kind of let him go, and you try to find a spot to jump in here and there. But just little things along the way that you can point out that are only 2 seconds long that people can see, instead of waiting for that whistle to go back to it. And then, but if you can do it as it's going and just jump in quick, bang, oh, that pass should have been there because of this. I think it makes a big difference. And, anybody that's played the game, understands the game. And there's a lot of people that haven't, that like to be kind of told what should have happened or what didn't happen.
Sure.
By that. So it helps them out in that way. You don't want to do too much of it, but you kind of just figure out time and when to do it and how long to do it for. So And a lot of it is this chemistry between the color guy and the play-by-play guy as well.
Sure.
So oddly enough, my favorite moment of you commentary was when you absolutely said nothing at all when Lindy Ruff was about to get into his fight there, and you're just standing in the middle of it all, and you're just like,
and Ruff are chipping away at each other.
It was the first night that when we started doing it, we were doing different things, and it was more reads and stuff like that. And that night, our producer Joe Pinter was like, "Hey, you're comfortable with both teams. Obviously you played for both. Maybe this is a good night to have an open mic, and you can kind of do your thing," which was cool. And then you're excited about it because finally you can be more game. And then when that happened, it was like I had RJ in my ear going, cover the mic. And I'm like, dude, it's not going to make a difference here unless then. And you just sort of sit back and let them go. And it was their show. And, Lindy was great with it. They knew Brian well, and he was giving him a hard time about things. And then he stumbled through the door and hit his shin and, pissed off about that. It was hurting and you're laughing. And yeah, it was one of those moments that it was pretty cool. A lot of people like to ask questions about it, but in that case, for us being a part of it, you're saying not sitting there, not saying anything. It's better just to let what was going on, just let them experience themselves instead of listening to anything I would have had to add to it until after the fact. So,
did you have the urge to jump on the ice? Did you wish you were there?
That when guys are doing something, but it doesn't happen anymore. Like in the past, there was a lot of talk back and forth as guys were coming off and yelling at each other, and it was fun. You heard a lot of real cool stuff, and it kind of brought. But now it doesn't happen as much. There's very rare does any of that kind of thing go on between the benches anymore. So you have the urge, and then you wait about 10 more seconds, and you think to yourself, I couldn't do that anymore. I'd last 10 seconds and I'd be done. So, but I love being between the benches, and when you have to sit up top, and you're up top more now than ever because there's less spots in buildings that have it between the benches, that it's great that we still do it at home. Because you get into the game, and it's like, you're still players sitting on the bench type instead of, being up top. Up top, you see all the negative, you see all the bad, and I don't like being that way, but sometimes you got to point it out, and, you don't want to be too negative towards the team, but you also got to, point out what's going on. And, I think players respect that and understand it too, that, at some point when they screw up, if it's pointed out, then, you make sure you back it up somewhere along the line with a, positive to, so you're not jumping on guy and burying them. So you kind of have a better feel for a lot of guys that do the job because they've never been out there. So,
sure.
I'm not a guy for making this mistake. It might not ever happen again, or if it's something that constantly happens, then you point it out.
Well, you really are. I mean, kudos to you. And, I'm not saying that to try to, kiss up here on the show. You really do a very good job with it. So kudos to you there, and continued success with that. Really. I was always a Ted Darling guy, the hype around Buffalo is always RJ. It's all you hear about. And it's like Ted Darling almost is a forgotten memory. And Ted Darling is what I grew up listening to. And that's what it was. I'd have the radio on and listen to him. And some of the best calls I've ever heard, I think Gilbert Perreault's 500th goal. I still have that ringing in my ear, of Ted Darling listening to it on the radio. And, that guy was phenomenal. He's often forgot about, but he's good.
Like a really Superman. I remember when I played junior in Cornwall, his son-in-law was the play-by-play guy for our junior team. And then when I got here, I heard a lot about him. I got here, and it was cool to get a chance to meet him and get to know him. And, even RJ, for what RJ did here, he still looks at Ted as the voice of the Sabres. And he's like, Ted Darling, it's not me. I did what I did, and, people appreciated it, and he had a great time. But,
That's
the
awesome.
voice is he looks at it as Ted Darling. And I think that's cool as hell from a guy like, putting Ted on that pedestal, and maybe instead of him, people can love RJ and, put him on that as one, but he himself is not the guy that's going to do it. So yeah, Ted did a great job. And it's
a legend respecting another legend. Yeah.
It's almost like, I seen an interview a while back about Michael Jordan, and he's like, the guy said, "Do you believe you were the greatest player ever?" And he's like, "No." He goes, "I never had a chance to play against all those guys before me. So how do I know? I would have loved to have a chance to play against, he rhymed off some guys, but no, I'm not that guy. And people may look at him and stats and all that kind of thing, put you in that area, but him as a person didn't look at that he was the greatest one. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. We're going to go with a little segment here, how we like to end these interviews. And by the way, with what you were just saying, Patty Coletta, we interviewed not too long ago, and he mentioned the same thing about that lack. Well, actually, I had brought it up, but he agreed the lack of not only fighting in the NHL, but just kind of that fire in the team up, right? Like, this is the last question I want to ask you before we go into rapid fire. Is that frustrating to you sometimes, being on the bench like that and seeing these guys? Like, is there times where you're just like, hey man, get over and slap this guy around and fire this team up? Let's get a little more pep in our step. Do you ever feel that?
Yeah, I feel it a lot. And then you sit back and you got to think about it that, these kids are not taught that way anymore. They don't play that game. You look at a lot of these kids that are playing, it doesn't matter what role they're playing on the team now. They were highly offensive guys. They were stars. So they weren't expected to do that. They didn't have to do it. They've never been taught to do it. In our area, it was part of the game. And sometimes, you look at it, it's a very emotional game. It's, you got to play on the edge. And, sometimes you get the feel that they're playing. And, when you think that it would be a good time to spark that emotion a little bit, and then you stop and think, these guys, they're not taught that way. They've never been expected to play that way. So as a fan and somebody doing my job, you can't sit there going, why the hell aren't you doing it? Because that's just not the way it is anymore. And as far as fighting, it's the same thing. They frown on it at the junior and college level. So guys aren't going to do it because they don't want to be suspended, and they're never taught how to do it, when to do it, and what it can do for, an emotional burst in a game. So you just got to realize that it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I think the farther we go here in the next few years, you're going to see less and less of it. Yeah. You're going to have the odd guy that, plays that way, but it's not going to be the way it was ever again. And even now, I think we had, 6 fights this year, along with the Sabres. So, that kind of thing, that may be the peak now, for a number of fights. And I think as a fan, we just have to realize the game's changed a little bit, and we're never going to see it again.
Yeah. No,
six fights. That was a week for you.
Yeah. So yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And even a big hit, would be nice to see though, man. I remember you'd go out, you'd check somebody's
got to go over and they get penalized for it, or somebody feels because somebody had their head down and you hit them clean that, you got to hit him or something. And that's not what it's all about. Like in the past, you got hit like that, you'd get back to the bench and the guys would razz your ass and say, hey, keep your head up, you dumbass. Like, put yourself in that position. And I think that's what happens a lot too, where people get kind of fired up. Players now put themselves in those vulnerable positions and not expecting to get hit and not expecting to get finished. So, a lot of it happens because they do it themselves. And I think we always look at the guy that did the initiating of it and make him look like the bad guy instead of the guy that put himself in that vulnerable position.
Yeah, right on. Let's do some rapid fire here. Whole idea with this, we got 6 questions. We're just going to throw them at you. You answer as quick as you can. We move on to the next one. Jay, you go ahead. Start it out.
All right. What's more annoying, being handed a warm beer or Matthew Barnaby?
Barney.
Okay, simple. Barney. Wings or drums? Which one you prefer?
Drums.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Next.
Best fighter you've ever fought?
I'm going to say Joe Kosher. Joe Kosher hit so hard that he had you on the defensive all the time.
Best fighter ever?
Oh, man, I don't know. Tiger Williams? I don't know. Craziest.
Okay. Go ahead, Jay.
Who was your idol growing up?
Bobby Orr.
All right.
There's that guy's just an absolute legend. Last question for the rapid fire. The NHL has a Rob Ray rule, right?
Yeah.
And
can't get naked on the ice, basically.
Can't get naked on the ice. They want you to keep your clothes on. A lot of people, you know, when you read up, they say, "Oh yeah, that's why Ray, man, he had this secret," you know. And I'm like, listen, first of all, it's smart as hell, right? It's absolutely an advantage that you used. Tell us a little bit about how that came about. You know, with just over the head, man, and everything coming off, and you know, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you know, when you first started playing that role, they, like in the 90s, there was everybody was kind of experimenting with different ways of getting an advantage, from tearaway sleeves to Velcro to get on your, you know, guys who grab on, you couldn't hold on because, and for me, it just kind of happened one night and it came off and it was like, whoa, this is not bad. So, you know, Jim Pizzatelli was a trainer at the time and we called him the fight doctor, and he was always wanting to try different things. So I went from just a regular jersey to a goalie cut jersey, 58 goalie cut. So it had bigger arms and a bigger body. And I never really liked shoulder pads anyway. So I had shoulder pads, but they had no straps on the arms or around the waist. So it cut all that stuff off. So it just kind of sat on your shoulders, these shoulder pads. And, you know, when guys would grab on, they'd grab the jersey, shoulder pads, and they're gone. And they had nothing to hang on to. The whole thing in fighting in the game, in hockey, is, you know, leverage and balance. So when a guy's got nothing to hang on to, then it puts him in a bad spot. But it was just trial and error over the years and kind of falling upon it, luckily, one night and kind of just took it to the next level. But you know, it was like everybody was trying something, and, you know, I found something that works for me. And, you know, it's kind of funny because you went from, when the rule came in, you went from having everything come off and being loose to actually going back to the tight jersey, having a tie down at the front and at the back, because when you first started going back to the back one, guys were lifting your jersey up over your face, and Ty was good at it. And I'm like, that's not going to work. So we had to, you know, I had the strap on the front and the strap on the back. So the jersey was glued on then. Couldn't do anything with it. So, but by that time it was, you know, you're confident in doing what you're doing, and, you know, you didn't worry about it quite as much as what you did when you were younger. So it was the first little while, maybe it took a little bit to kind of get used to it. But after a while, it just, you know, it was no big deal.
Listen, man, we cannot thank you enough for taking some time and coming on with us. Anything you want to endorse, anything you're involved with, you know, you'd like to give a shout out to anything?
Just, you know, I do the alumni now. We got our scholarships coming up that are due July 1st. All the kids in the local area that are going to college next year, go online to the saberalumni.com and, you know, send in an application. Everything we make during the season, we give out in scholarships. So we give a lot of money out every year, and we just like to have as many kids as possible to choose from. So right now, that is kind of what we're looking at and dealing with. And that's the next thing on our calendar.
Awesome.
Excellent. Razor, super down to earth guy, man. I've always had utmost respect for you. Keep doing what you're doing, man, and rocking it with the, you know, between the benches there, man. And we truly do appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us today.
Hey, no problem, guys. Anytime. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much. Take care. Talk soon.